knows who you are, and I was going to ask you, tell you a bit about yourself, as in everyone knows you're an established hairdresser. But I want to know, like, growing up, in terms of faith, was it something that was always there, or like did it grow later?
Well, I was a Catholic.
Okay.
I'm Catholic. I'm born a Catholic, and that is something that has always been there with me, and even right throughout my school days, and even throughout my adult days. When I was working, I used to be very strong in my faith.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember I used to go to church every morning on my way to work. I'll drop in, and pray for a little while and go. So I had faith in me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've always been somebody who believed.
Okay, awesome. And what is it about mountains? Like, where did that passion come from exactly? From hairdressing to mountains, that's just
Yeah, I know it's completely different
Yeah.
because it's two different things, and it's really breaking the stereotypes as well.
Yeah.
Because hairdressers don't like getting their fingers dirty, and they don't
Yeah.
do anything out of the box, as it were, in this sense. It was something that was instigated to me by my father.
Okay.
He's the one who put this interest in me. He took me and went climbing when I was in school, and from that time onwards, I developed a sort of a passion for it, and that's where it all started. And that was a little seed that was planted, and then I started exploring myself. Got together with friends and started exploring other mountains.
Okay. So that's where it came from.
That's where it all started.
And Everest, is there a specific significance to, like, I know it's like the tallest mountain, but like, as in terms of like a metaphor, was there a reason that you really wanted to conquer it?
Not really. See, what happened was it wasn't really a childhood dream of mine, because it seemed almost impossible.
Okay.
We've all heard about Everest.
Yeah.
And for us, it seems more difficult because because we are from sea level here, and we don't have high altitude mountains in Sri Lanka. So it makes it that much harder for us to do this.
Yeah.
But when I went in 2010 to base camp in the Everest range, that's when I saw her for the first time. And it wasn't even about climbing, it was just about finding out how people do it, because it seemed almost impossible. And that's when I started researching into it.
Okay.
And in 2012, I went back and climbed another mountain called Island Peak. And at that point, my friend and I, Jay and I both, we looked at the mountain and we said, do you think we can climb this? Let's start seeing if we can actually do this. And that's when it all started.
Okay.
That's when the whole idea was birthed at that time.
And how long did it take from that idea to become a reality?
So from that time onwards, we've been preparing.
Okay, so that's around
2012, so 4 years.
4 years.
We've been preparing for this, and there's a lot of work that needs to go into it.
Yeah.
So we started off early.
And that must have taken a lot of patience and
It was, and it was a lot of finding out as well. It was a lot of research that we had to go into, because we needed to see how we were going to do this in terms of how the body would react. That's why we did the acclimatization climbs before, and to see what sort of equipment is needed. How there's a very scientific side to it as well. How your body would react. So we had to look into all that. We had to get advice. We had to talk to people who had actually gone up Everest before. And that was very interesting. It was an interesting process.
Yeah, and you must have gone through a bit of like intense training to take that on in the first
Yes,
place,
the physical training also was another side completely. I had to really.
I can't imagine. I can't even imagine. Yeah. So on top of that, just like a little bit about what I know you told us like a little bit about what you experienced, and like you can't summarize that very soon. But I'm talking about specifically like what you saw and how that affected your faith, and like what message of life that is preached. How did that like impact you in that moment?
So to me, one of the reasons I decided eventually, they tell you that you always have a 50-50 chance when you climb something like Everest.
Yeah.
Because you are in the hands of nature, and people believe that there are some elements that are beyond your control. But I think the reason for me deciding actually to do this also was after hearing the word of life being preached. And that's when I realized, well, I've got life, so I need to do this.
Yeah.
This is something that can't stop me, because if I believe in it, it has to happen.
Yeah.
And that's when I originally spoke to Kirby about it, first of all, and told him I have this idea. And he said, go for it.
Yeah.
So from that time onwards, I had absolutely no doubt, because I knew that God was going to be on my side.
But in certain situations, did it like get kind of trying, and how was it like
It
tested?
did. There were lots of moments that was life-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were situations which is beyond our control actually. It's nature. There was an avalanche which I got caught to, and normally, that could be the last for you. But at that time also I knew that this was not going to harm me.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that these were just testings, and it was just, natural things that were happening, but my faith was above that. And
so even seeing like tragedy, and like, I know you experienced death as you saw people dying.
Absolutely.
And even in that moment, you always held on to the message of life.
You did. Well, I think the human side of you gets to you at some point, and I felt down. I can't say I wasn't frightened. I was frightened. There were moments that I was depressed, that I felt low.
Yeah.
But I was able to overcome that, and I think I was able to overcome it only because I had the strength of the Spirit in me.
Yeah.
And that was the only way I could have overcome it. Otherwise, I'm sure I would have given up.
Yeah.
And even going on the mountain, climbing, when it became difficult, Jant used to always ask me, how do you keep going? Because I somehow kept going. But I used to meditate on the Word.
Okay.
And I feel that I was strengthened by the Word to keep going.
Okay. Were there any specific verses that you turned to that kept you going?
Well, yeah, one of the most important things was whenever I felt down, I used to always remember the word that said, greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. Everything else that is around you, is all secondary. But the one who's in me is stronger. And that was the strength. And then Kirby had sent me a few verses just before I had started climbing as well, that He will give you wings of an eagle.
Oh, wow.
And, all those are verses and words that kept manifesting in me to build up my strength to go on. So to me, this was a real spiritual journey.
Yeah, and especially in that moment at the end, like how did you manage to see God's goodness in such a situation, when you could not finish?
Well, see, the thing is, I think expectations are completely different.
Okay.
What we expect in life is not really God's plan for you.
Yeah.
I learned that was one of the lessons that I learned. And when I had visions, and I had words of God telling me that He's going to take me up the mountain like Moses did. And that's what I was expecting. I was expecting to have a one-on-one sort of encounter with God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I never expected that it would be this way.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is something completely negative, where I wasn't even able to get right to the top.
Yeah.
Just 350 meters away, I had to turn back when the summit was right in front of me.
Yeah.
And I felt that was like a human testing for me. And I knew God was there with me. Of course, like I said again, the human side of me got to me first. Yeah, I turned around and I said, I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I put my mask back on and I said, I come all this way, I'm not stopping now, I'm going.
Yeah.
And I could have been arrogant at that point, and even though I was looking at things from the spiritual side, I could have been arrogant and said, God will take me up.
Yeah.
And go up.
Yeah.
But I think there was a deeper lesson in this for me. And when He stopped me for the second time and said, you can go up, but you can't come back, that's when I had to really stop and think.
Because you'd die, right, if you went up.
Exactly. I wouldn't have been able to do the turnaround and make the journey back. Okay. And then I actually sat down for a minute and I prayed, because that was the only thing that I could do, and I could talk. And then He reminded me of the words that He had taught me before and the words that were in me. And He said, I give you 2 trees. So this was my knowledge. Yeah, He gives you the 2 trees, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. Yeah. And my knowledge would have taken me up. That's what I wanted to do. But there was a deeper meaning to this whole thing, and I had to choose the tree of life, because life is what we are here for. And life was more important. I realized that though I made the decision then, and I came back, I truly realized what He had really done after I came back, after I came down the mountain. And that's when I started thinking, this is the encounter you were talking about. This is what it was all about. And it's amazing how that message is now being used. People are coming up to me and saying, it's great to go up the mountain. I know it is. The first Lankas and all that is there. But what you did is greater. and people are coming and they're asking me for advice. And the other day there was a guy we spoke somewhere who listened to me and then came back and said, there is a situation in my life like this with my child, and I was able to preach the word to him.
Wow.
And I was able to tell him. So I feel that this is a way of God opening avenues for me to preach the word and make him known.
Wow, so actually like that experience was more profound than you actually going up.
Exactly. I feel to a certain extent also that this was a humbling process.
Okay.
Because somehow we all have pride in us. Yeah, and that's something that we keep battling in our spiritual journey, our own pride and overcoming our own pride. And I feel that if I had gone up, I think pride would have taken over. Yeah, and this has really made me humble.
Yeah.
And this has been a humbling process for me, humbling before God, really. So it's a completely different story to what I was expecting, but I feel it's a great story.
I think it's a better story than mine. But also I thought that I drew this parallel when you gave the story as well, but the partner finishing, right? Wasn't that like absolute grace upon her life that was like, that she got to like go through that? Because I know she was behind you most of the time.
Exactly.
And then she took over. And I thought that like, wow, like that's also another like testimony of.
Yes, absolutely, and that was amazing because we always she thought that she would be the one with the problem. Yeah, but unfortunately this was a problem beyond our control. And every day before we left, I used to get her and I used to say, okay, let's pray before we go, let's commit ourselves to God. And we used to do this every day in the tent, every day before we started our journey.
Wow.
Even if she forgot, I used to bring her back and say, we have to do this. And I think that was real grace upon her life, really. And it was a way of testing me as well, to see how much I would support and how much I would be there, even at a time like this. And my first reaction at that point, after I had decided to make the turn, was to see where she was. I wanted to make sure that she had gone up. Because I knew the victory was with the two of us going. He took the two of us together. So that's what was important.
Wow.
This.
Amazing. And from this experience, like how have you feel like your daily relationship has changed with God and Jesus? And is there anything different or?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel I'm close to the spiritual journey itself has taken me to a completely different level altogether. And like I said, it's given me opportunities to talk to people. So we got a lot of speaking engagements as well that we've had to do, motivational speaking, which we're doing almost on a daily basis now.
Wow.
And I try to fit this in somewhere, so that it doesn't offend people as well. But I have to get my message across, so I always mention that, the decision that I had to make and the whole journey was all to do with God. And, He was there with us. He was there, and that's how we were able to do this, make this journey.
Without Him, the flesh is weak, but with Him, the flesh is strong.
Absolutely. He makes us stronger, and takes us through our journey.
Wow, that's amazing. And what is the next mountain you want to conquer?
I think we all have mountains in our life also to conquer. But looking at it really metaphorically, as the mountains. There isn't anything that we have specifically decided. You get the 7 summits, which is the highest mountain in every continent. That's something that we could look at, but we haven't specifically thought of what we should do. There are beautiful areas in New Zealand and Switzerland and places, even South America. So we're looking at some of those. We certainly will.
That's exciting. And metaphorically, any mountains that you feel like you still want to conquer, or that God is taking you higher, whether you like it or not?
Well, I think I need to spend a little more time, meditating on that and really asking God what His plan is for me as well. Because I feel there was a real plan in this, So I'd like to wait for the Spirit to sort of lead me on what I want to do next as well, which would be, I think, interesting.
Awesome. And what do you hope that people can really draw from this story of Everest and conquering this mountain?
Well, I think it is just that nothing is impossible. We all have our dreams. And if we chase after them and if we pursue them, uh, it is possible. There were so many times that people thought that we were mad. They thought that we were crazy to even attempt something like this, because no Sri Lankan had even attempted it before. Yeah, because it's so big, it's so huge, it's such a great deal to do something like this. And as I said earlier, for Sri Lankans, for people who come from sea level, to try and climb to the highest point of the world, it is a serious thing. Scientifically, it is a very serious thing.
Yeah.
So I think that is one of the messages, and also to have faith and believe in what you really want to do. There were moments that even before we went, that we almost thought that we couldn't go. And I remember the funding hadn't come, and we were almost cancelling our trip in February, because we were leaving at the end of March, and by February we hadn't got any funding at all. Our deadline was December, the year before. So, but then when I spoke to Kirby as well, he told me, God showed you definitely that this is something that you need to do, and He's not going to provide you with everything, with all the facilities, if He showed it to you. Right? And He said, this is where your faith really comes into play. Will you stand on the word? And wait? Or will you call it off? Which side will get to you? And I remember coming and sharing that with Jay immediately, and I said, this is what it is. We've got to, I have faith to believe that it is coming, and God has really shown. And He had a word for me to say that the funding was coming. But He also had a specific time. As He does now tell you, He gives you specific times. And Kirby told me, he had a vision, he had a revelation, and he told me that it will come only in the last 10 days. And that was very tough for us, because, how do we wait for the last 10 days? And when I told Jay, she said, no way. She said, I can't do this. You go, I'll stay. I don't have the faith. And I remember telling her, you stand on my faith. Right? You stand behind me. That's all I'm asking you to do. Right? It doesn't matter. If you have that much of faith, that's small as a mustard seed, that's all you need. And I said, if you have the faith to stand behind me, that's all I want from you. Okay, stand on my faith. And we finally did something that we thought, that we might not be able to sort of face later on. We took a loan and we paid the money off, which is a huge amount to pay. A cost like that. But I did it with faith. And it was amazing. From the day I did that, it was 2 days after that, as soon as I did that, suddenly the breakthrough came. It was amazing. It happened overnight. The next day people started calling us, and everything just started pouring in. And like Kirby prophesied, in that last week was when everything fell into place, and just before we went, every single cent came in. So it was amazing, and at that time I knew, that this was a journey that God was going to go with me right throughout, and I knew He was there right with me, and I had absolutely no doubt that everything was going to be good. And that we were going to be back here.
You're coming back
more than anything else.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Johann, for sharing your wonderful story. Truly blessed to be in your presence and
Thank
to
you.
know you. Thank you so much.